And welcome to the Sweeney Show, Business and Law Podcast. Joining me here today is Flor McCarthy. Flor is a solicitor with McCarthy & Co. Solicitors in Clonakilty. Flor, you're very welcome.
Thank you very much, David. Lovely to be on the podcast. Really appreciate you having me on.
Well, it's great having you here, and really interested in hearing what you have to say, because we're going to talk a lot about, I think, the solicitor, the legal industry, maybe your own personal story about how you became qualified, because I know you're in a family business, and I think the legal profession, it runs strong in the McCarthy veins, doesn't it? Do you have family members in it?
I say it's kind of like a genetic disorder in the McCarthy family. My father's a solicitor, my mother's a solicitor, and two of my brothers are solicitors.
Okay, and
my other brothers are barristers.
Oh wow! Okay, so you have it all wrapped up. And where did your legal journey start? Did you do a legal law undergraduate in Cork?
I did, yeah. I did law in UCC way back. It seems like aeons ago now. Back in the early 90s, I did law in UCC to start, and had a wonderful experience there. Wasn't the greatest legal student, it must be said, but certainly that's where I started.
That's what college is for, isn't it? Experience the full breadth of the education experience.
Then I travelled for a year. I went to Edinburgh and I worked in a bar there for a year. Met my wife there, funnily enough, and came back then to Dublin and did a master's in UCD in commercial law. And then I started my apprenticeship, as it was then known, in a firm called PF O'Reilly's in South Great George's Street in Dublin, which was kind of a mid-sized Dublin firm. Certainly back then, and would have been they would have dealt with a lot of, they acted for Temple Bar Properties at that time, and so it was a very exciting time in Dublin. All of that kind of redevelopment of Temple Bar was well underway at that stage, but was really it was going at full tilt, and there's a lot of very exciting kind of property development activity, actually some quite, innovative and interesting sort of developments in conveyancing and landlord and tenant developments, because of that whole development was really quite transformative in terms of the urban redevelopment at that time. And so that was a great kind of starting, a great training. And I spent I spent 5 years there, then training, and then subsequently working there up until 2000, and I came back here to Clonakilty. Yeah, so my dad had been a solicitor, but I never worked with him, and he was in a different firm in Skibbereen. My mom had set up this business here in Clonakilty back in the mid '80s, and worked on her own, very very small scale, just did her own thing, and I decided to come back here, and we went into business together, me and my mom, and that was in 2000. At the time, I remember thinking my salary in Dublin was greater than the turnover of the business here back then, and they weren't paying me much at that time.
Sure.
Because it was just, she was obviously doing that and raising her family and many other things then. So and then from 2000 on, the business, we just started here from very very small beginnings, and we have grown. My brother John joined us then as a partner in 2004, and then the business grew and grew and grew. And I felt, Dave, I have to say at that time, I felt I was like a business genius then, of course, because from the mid 90s until the 2007, everything was just booming and growing, and you just
caught on that wave.
It's going to be better than the year before, but we weren't actually doing anything to make that happen. It was just this economic bubble we were in, and that all then obviously ended quite badly. And
when you kind of, I suppose, like the rest of the country rode that wave of the late 90s, early 2000s, when the crash came, that 2007, 8, 9 period, it really hit the legal industry hard. Obviously there was, knock-on effects, domino effects of the property industry. How did you adjust to that, or how did you
it's interesting, it's interesting, and God, we all remember that, the scars on our back, but those were in practice then. I think we'll never forget. And I actually think I had two apprenticeships or two trainingships, and one was from 1994 to 1998 when I was an apprentice solicitor, and then I went through another training from 2008, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. Those were awful years, and I mean, we found ourselves in 2008 where essentially, 2009 when it tipped in really, just our business just evaporated, because everything we had been doing up to that point, we had double-digit growth for 10 years, really, and then it just fell off a cliff. because it was obviously a property bubble. And everything we were doing in the practice then was property related. It was conveyancing, refinancing. We did family law back then. And of course, it was the equity in the properties and refinancing that paid for everything. If there was an equity dispute between two neighbors, one bought out the other or whatever, it was always the property that solved the problem. Probate, it was the property that, provided the liquidity and the cash. And again, from a business point of view, in terms of running a legal practice, then you would be quite sloppy with credit control and cash flow management, because you would say, well, look, when the property gets sold or they refinance, we can talk about any arrears that need to be kind of cleared up at that stage, and it would all come good eventually. So that obviously as a model became defunct, and also of course the underlying business itself just stopped happening. There was no conveyancing. There was no, and all of that conveyancing then, as I say, facilitated the liquidity in many almost all other parts of our business, and that just stopped. And of course, then the property values went into negative equity. We ourselves then, of course, like everybody, had been involved in borrowing for premises and private houses and investment properties. All that came with its own just miserable consequences, and everybody in the country was in a similar situation. So that really was an extraordinarily challenging period. And at that time, then we had to say, well, what are we going to do here? We can't continue doing this. And so we then decided to reposition ourselves. At that stage, personal injury and medical negligence would have been maybe 10% of what we did, and of course we were in a small rural location, so there wasn't a market locally for us that would sustain a practice based on that kind of niche area. So we decided to push out the net nationally and went online in a big way, nationwide, in personal injury and medical negligence. And at the time, I remember us kind of thinking, God, well, wouldn't we love to have that? But wouldn't everybody? And how can you expect to make that happen? And of course now, more than 10 years later, that's what's happened, and it's just interesting. So learning how to market that business, how to position that business, how to run that business and deliver that service, was a kind of a second learning how to run the business of
that's what I was going to ask you. Just going to you touched on it there. People, when the good times, they never kept their eye on the actual office bank balance, cash flow was good, and then when it started to tighten, they realised the amount of bills and outgoings and the cost of just being in business. Do you think that's a mentality for most solicitors, and they go through the law society? That they're an academic and they're excellent lawyers, linguists, advocates,
absolutely,
but the business side of things maybe gets left behind. Do you think that mindset has changed now, or what do you say on that?
I'm not sure that it's changed. I certainly think there's more awareness of it now, but but certainly I think that's a huge factor, and I think it is. We see the legal business from the inside and are very particularly kind of familiar with it, of course. And lawyers do have a particular kind of mindset in terms of, see them. Do not get me wrong. I love the business we're in. I love the people. I love most solicitors that I know are extremely service orientated. They want to help people. That's what they're trained and qualified to do. They're extremely resourceful. They'll solve any problem. They'll get the thing done. So don't misunderstand me. But I think in a way though, there's a broader thing here about how technical people run businesses, and I think I'm a big fan of Michael Gerber and the whole E-Myth. I'm not sure if you're familiar with his work, but it's fascinating. His take, and he looks at this from the point of view of bakers or plumbers or lawyers or anybody who's in a kind of who's in a service delivery technical business. They want to just do their thing and be really good at their thing, and they think just doing that thing in and of itself is going to be good enough. So if you bake great cakes, or if you do great plumbing, or if you're a great solicitor, then that's going to be enough for you to have a great business. But of course, that thing that you do, the technical excellence, the professional excellence that you are so proud of and so into to giving your all to, is really only one element of a functioning business. It's just the service delivery element. And you then need, on top of that, you need a sales function and you need a marketing function. And so the service delivery is only 1/3. That happens after the sales function, which is another 1/3, which happens after the marketing function, which is another 1/3. And I think that very few business owners, and within that category, the subcategory of legal professional practice owners, I think very few really get that, and I suppose very few want to actually have to do that, because it's a different skill set, and it's uncomfortable for a lot of people.
Should the mindset be that I'm a business person first and selling legal services, or there's probably room for both sides, isn't there? At one person, mindset of I just want to be a solicitor.
There's the professional, I'm a huge, hugely, my professional, integrity and professionalism and the professional standards of our profession and all of the things that are kind of inherent to that are really, really important to me. But yes, I think if you're going to have a functioning business, it's going to pay the bills, and one of the bills is the solicitor's salary and the salary of the staff that work there. And this is the kind of a thing, I guess, solicitors, there's a bit of an entitlement mindset. We go to college, we do all this study, we become very highly technically excellent, and then we say we're entitled then to be paid, accordingly. In our minds, we believe that we've earned it, if you like. But really, we're only entitled to get what value we provide and what our business can provide, and for the clients and customers that it serves in a way that works for them, that they're willing to pay. And so then we need to structure our business. And you hear a lot of solicitors will maybe rail against the idea of maybe commodity pricing in certain areas and, systemization of things in certain areas. But these are just realities of life. And maybe we just need to adjust our cost base so we don't have very expensive people delivering, what should be relatively standardized services. And that's, again, those are kind of business problems rather than legal professional problems, but a legal professional business owner needs to solve both. Can I just, I want to get into kind of, I suppose, traditional versus modern legal office in a second, but you you touched on something there when you, I suppose, pivoted your business and redirected, and predominantly do personal injury, medical negligence work. And I suppose part of that is you must get the message out to the public that that's what you want to do, whether it's through social media, traditional marketing methods. Do you experience, or did you experience any kind of negativity from the market, or how do you do that? Because solicitors, they're sometimes not thought be the most nicest profession. The public have an opinion about it. Ambulance chasing, that kind of stuff. And first of all, have you ever experienced that, whether it be online or just in general? And secondly, how, as you a solicitor, if you're trying to market yourself into profession, and I've actually read a lot into this, so that of all the professions and all the jobs in a profession, personal injury marketing is the toughest in the world, renowned across every market. So how does somebody do that? You have a really good personal injury lawyer, really knows in Ireland the personal injury assessment board system, the court system, how to negotiate with insurance companies, really good with clients, but yet can't get the message out there because they feel there's some kind of a public opinion against them. How do you work around that, or how is there an avenue out of that? Dave, thank you for asking that question. But how long have you got? I guess I could do PhD in that. But but you raised so many really, really good points there. Okay, but there's the kind of sleazy kind of side to PI as it's portrayed. And I would say portrayed because it's very deliberately portrayed like that by a particular vested interest, and we have this whole kind of narrative that's out there about, claims culture, compensation culture, fraudulence.
Sorry, is the vested interest the insurance companies?
Well, that is the industry who is ultimately, is saying that it's the cost of claims that's driving up the cost of insurance. We have not seen any proof or connection in relation to that, except that we're seeing an industry taking exceptional profits in the meantime. But certainly, there is no lobby group for claimants, okay? So people who are personal injury claimants are all individuals who have, through no fault of their own, been injured by the negligence of third parties.
Genuinely hurt people, yeah.
And that's the bottom line. Now, if anybody is guilty of fraud or exaggeration, they should be banged to rights and prosecuted, and I will have no time whatsoever for that or for any solicitor who kind of facilitates anything like that. I think that is absolutely just, I have contempt for that, okay? On the other hand, genuinely injured, innocent victims of, the negligence of third parties, I believe have a constitutional right to pursue their claims and should make no apologies to anybody about doing that, and neither should anybody who represents them.
And that's it. And they also have a right to hire an advocate, being a solicitor.
Absolutely, and to have their rights vindicated, and for that to be done in a dignified, respectful way, and for the and for them not to feel some kind of social shame because they're pursuing this. So I mean, I take a completely reverse position. I mean, so in relation to solicitors who are in that position, I think we have obviously we have to act with integrity. We have to act responsibly. We have to act with professionalism and uphold the law and make sure that and so I mean, if we see anybody acting in a way that we
but also, Flor, like even on a practical basis, go back to like the business sense. The way the process works is that if a claim is successful, whether through the courts or settled out of court or through the PIAP system, it did agree the award. The solicitor the client gets the award at the end, and the solicitor gets paid at the end, and that's all transparent, whether it's no full, no fee, or is a cost basis plus through the courts. But solicitors don't want to take on cases that they don't want to get paid. That's the practicality.
Exactly.
You're not going to put 2 years, 18 months, sometimes 4 years into a case. That's a fraudulent case, a false case. Like the risk management in most solicitor practice in the first meeting, there's nearly 3 or 4 stages a client must go through before they get the meeting. And after that, the solicitor thinks long and hard whether they want to take it on and invest the time and those office resources into it.
I mean, absolutely. I mean, the one you say what you like about solicitors, Dave. The one thing they're not is stupid.
Yeah.
Okay. So who is going to take on a dodgy case that, and on the basis they're only going to get paid if it wins, right? I mean, because we don't like, and again, so I just think it rationally doesn't make sense, because I mean we're getting this kind of, there's this perceived wisdom in the, I don't know, at the moment, that there is a compensation culture, B, there's a culture of fraud, and C, that this is leading to a rise in the cost of insurance. Now, I have not seen proof of any of these. I have seen instances of some of those things happening, but and certainly we do not see, we would not touch anything that we felt there was anything kind of disreputable or dishonest in relation to it. We would just send anybody who approaches like that just packing. But the point is, it's not like we're sending every second one away. You know what I mean? I mean, the vast majority of the people that contact us are genuinely injured people. And we won't take on many of those cases because we don't believe there's good liability, or because we believe there's issues with maybe that they're not properly indemnified, or whatever the case may be. So I mean, like, a solicitor is only going to take a case if it's well, at least certainly a solicitor like me is only going, and you is only going to take a case it's a genuine case. They believe in it. There's no suggestion of anything. And again, a solicitor knows that if somebody gets caught for exaggeration in the middle of a case, they're at risk of any costs being lost and so on. So I mean, it's like, even looking at it from a kind of if you take out principles out of it, if you look at it from the pure point of view of what is in somebody's kind of rational self-interest, well then I just don't think that this argument really stands up. In terms of the argument that's been put out there about this kind of compensation culture. But if you like to come back, so I mean and I think you and I could talk all day about that, I'm extremely proud, and I feel as solicitors acting in personal injury, we have a very, there's an onus on us to stand up, because it's very, very unpopular in society. A lot of in polite society now, I don't think you'd be at a dinner party now talking about your personal injury claim too much. It's seen as a little bit kind of, and maybe you're putting places out of business because the cost of insurance has been driven up by a claim and all this kind of stuff, which is, again, as I say, unproven and frankly, the insurance industry, I think, has should come clean in relation to this, and isn't. But leave all that aside for a second. You asked a really good question, which is about a solicitor trying to get
the message out
in that area, and how would you go about doing it? How should you do it? And I suppose if the thing that I see there, let's say, never mind the technical how you might do that, but it's from a principle point of view, I believe, and this is a kind of a guiding principle with me, if I know that there's somebody out there that is an ideal client for me to help, and that if they do not get my help, they may, not get the outcome that they deserve, or they may get a sub-optimum outcome, or one that is far, far less than they should actually have achieved, because they didn't have the service that I know that I can give them. Well, I believe it's my duty to actually make them aware of that, okay? And I do know that's the case, and so that's what I do. And I make no apologies about doing it. Now, obviously, we have to comply with regulation.
Yeah, because the Law Society regulations advertising are pretty stringent, they are.
And they're probably the most stringent in the world, by a long shot.
Like I saw, I don't know, obviously you watch America, and like over there it's a free-for-all, and I hope it never happens here because there's no need for it, but there was 2 I saw. One was, we don't chase ambulances, we chase justice, which I thought was actually quite funny. But I saw one the other day, and it was a billboard sign, and it said "injured?" and underneath it said "good."
Well, look, I mean,
you know, I don't know, like they're very good marketing ploys, but
yeah, and don't inject domestos either, by the way.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, did you see there was something like 40 people in the New York area were admitted to hospital for drinking it last week?
This is not disinfectant.
So look, sorry for I just got sidetracked there. But the law study regulations are very serious too, aren't they?
They are, they're very stringent. And again, I suppose if I was asked, I would take issue with. I think they're too restrictive, but they are the law, and therefore we must comply with them. And similarly, I have no, I see, we see some operators here in the market who try to flout the thing, and they will work, with, kind of sort of dodgy kind of websites, and they will try and get around or avoid the regulations here. I just simply say, that's again, I hope that they are caught and they are put out of business, because I mean, at the end of the day, the law is the law passed by the government of this country, and we have to obey it. But I will do it. I will do what I do in compliance with the law, and that's what I do, and I'm very proud of that, actually.
So just, I think we spoke about it briefly earlier about the traditional type of legal practice and now the modern type of legal practice. And I think we can, maybe this leads into the next conversation about, finding opportunities in a crisis, because when, you were working in 2008 and 2009, like you had to pivot the business, which is quite similar now to COVID-19, where, doors are shut, offices working on shoestring staff, the courts are closed, limited government resources available to us. I think they're starting to come back now. Land registry is starting to work again, but for a period of the last 2 months, you couldn't get a document stamped. People are worried about statute of limitation periods. What if you have, say, a so-called traditional office, and would that mean maybe you don't have modern legal systems in your office, kind of document management systems, scanning, or does it mean much more than that? Is it a process or is it a mentality?
Do you know, Dave? Because you asked me or mentioned to me just about things we might talk about before this, and I was only just kind of, as I was thinking about it, because you asked about the traditional versus the modern, and they're all of those things, and we could talk about that, the technological kinds of divide and difference. But actually, just when I was thinking about it before we started talking there today, I think the most important is possibly the mindset. And I'm not sure if it's changed sufficiently yet, but I think it is changing. I mean, just take, for example, solicitors used to always put their offices next to courthouses because that was convenient for them to be able to do their business, to go to court every day. But they didn't think and say, is this convenient for my clients? Or, solicitors would make their clients wait until they were finished doing whatever they was, and then they would be admitted, or they would ring them back whenever they got back to them because they were busy doing whatever they were doing. They would call their colleagues back before they would call their clients back. So the traditional kind of legal profession was very kind of self-serving, if you like, or very kind of self-focused, I think. And I mean, and the solicitor's profession existed, if you like, in this little bubble between the public on the outside and the barristers, and then the judiciary on the other side. So it was kind of like it was quite a rarefied little bubble. And that has gradually kind of changed, as you know. I mean, this is, I'm talking about over a period of, well, certainly even before my time in practice, which is now, I hate to say it, going back over 25 years. But so that mentality, I think, was there originally, which was, I guess, the solicitors are there to do the legal work, which is the most important thing, and the clients can kind of can take that whatever way they give it to them, and they must kind of basically just fit in with the way the legal world works. And I think the transformation that has happened, or that should happen, is it's got to be the other way around. That ultimately it's about how do we serve the client, and how do we design our businesses and work our businesses to actually make, in doing what we do, as I say, to the highest professional standards and with the highest integrity. But ultimately it has to be, it's called legal services, right? So we've got to serve the clients that are looking for these things to be done. And so how do we then, I suppose, the pivot, I guess, is in terms of our whole lens should be from the point of view of how do we deliver our service to suit the people who we're looking to pay for it, rather than to suit ourselves. And so So that happens then in terms of technology. How do you know? So then you can look at kind of, let's say, specific instances of that and how did that works. I mean, you talk about the COVID thing now, and yes, I mean and I think what's coming after this, Dave, I don't know. I mean, there's no point in speculating. I think we just got to work day at a time. But certainly, I think this is going to be worse than 09. And
in what way? As in, it's not only going to be the property market; it's going to be across all industry.
I think there's going to be. I think that, the economic. Just the sheer. I mean, we've had 22% unemployment, and
Well, I was actually just talking to a mortgage broker in the last day or two, and it seemed to one of the banks have just come out to say that if your employer has gone on the COVID scheme, your loan offer is going to be pulled.
Yeah, I mean,
it's quite scary.
And you see, at the moment, we're in an artificial kind of. It's like the road. In the Roadrunner cartoons, when the Wile E. Coyote runs off the cliff, and he's kind of still running. And then he goes, and he looks down. So we're still in the bit where we're still running, and we're in the artificial wage support payment. Everybody's at home. There's a future cost for all of that. I suppose that's what you're saying, isn't it? There's a future cost for all of that. Well, there is, and I mean, because what's going to happen is, I can't see the pubs opening anytime soon. We're not going to have a summer in terms of activity. There's, all events have been cancelled. So the airline industry, I can't see returning to its way it operated. So business travel is I think, going to suffer permanent change. And then that's going to feed through. So, and when the wage support scheme stops, that's going to feed through then to, large scale redundancies, which then is going to feed through to just whether. So, and I don't want to be a kind of a, and we want to keep our audience kind of, we want to give them a positive message.
Yeah, sure.
But at the same time, I do believe there's no point. We have to confront reality as it is.
Yeah.
And I think that is certainly. So what can we do? So I think I would look again to the idea of how do we serve the people that we're supposed to serve, right? So it's about because that's what I love what you're doing here. You're now giving something to your community that people can get access to. They're at home, they're isolated, and you're providing them with a wonderful.
Yeah, but just part the podcast. I've noticed, because I've never actually I've done this for about 2 years now. It first started off as kind of a secondary ad for my business, where I had people related services, or architects, engineers, or person guy, whatever it might be. But for this session, it's the solicitor sessions. I'm having solicitors on, so I have about 15 lined up. I'm coupling the recording because I want to record a batch of them. But the information that solicitors have that they don't realise, and also that solicitors are just normal people. They're quite humane, as you said, very understanding, very knowledgeable, and that's my goal here is to give the information that the guests have, that you as the expert have, out into the public domain.
Yeah, I mean, for instance, right? I mean, we're talking about changes about how you might deliver how the service is done, right? I mean, first of all, how many people are stuck at home now in their houses, working from home? They're going off their nuts because they can only go 2 kilometers outside, or they're stuck in an apartment somewhere and they're doing everything online. Maybe they've got some issue that they would really like to try and get resolved, but they can't get out. They can't. What would it be like if they had somebody providing them with a podcast or a webinar that they could actually kind of get some valuable information? Any solicitor who's sitting at home there now, who's got access to the internet, could effectively get what you were doing going with, it's all available online. If you got a credit card and some, you can pretty much set this.
But I know your practice. You've been using the Zoom call now. It's become quite popular in the lockdown. It's more prevalent, but you've used that for a long time now, haven't you? For your clients,
I've been using Zoom for years, and I would actually, because I have always I try and avoid leaving my office, if at all possible, simply because I just find the traveling and moving very, very inefficient. If I want to travel I travel, but I don't travel just because it's to arrange a face-to-face meeting that I can do much more. And similarly, we're going to find our clients now are going to find that to be the case. Why are they going to? Okay, so this is the thing, and this is the thing we found in our business here. Why should I have to get cleaned up, get out of my pajamas, put on some respectable clothes, get somebody to mind my kids, organize some time off work, travel across town to go into a scheduled appointment with some guy or girl or whoever who I'm paying €250 an hour for the privilege of the conversation? Why would I do all that if I could just arrange a Zoom call at some time that was convenient for me?
Isn't that, again, you spoke about earlier, the mindset? Is that a huge shift in mindset and shift in possibly the legal industry even for that to happen?
Yeah. So I mean, and I think there's an opportunity there now for people to say, okay, why don't I deliver my service in this way? Why couldn't I set it up that you can go online, you can book a Zoom consultation, you put in your credit card details, you pay in advance, and you can have a half-hour consultation or an hour consultation, whatever you need. This would be a win-win for somebody now who can't get somebody. And I can tell you, there's people now who are sitting in their houses all over the world, but in this country, who are probably in the middle of maybe the relationship wasn't going so well before, but now they've really realized that they're going to make some serious changes after this comes out, and they would really like the opportunity to be able to talk to some people. I was just talking to a family lawyer about that, saying there is something that I think. How would you help people who are in that situation?
You don't need some fancy high tech. Like, you can do it off a smartphone, video on your phone. It's just an app.
Completely.
It's very accessible.
Yeah.
So, Flor, listen, thank you very much for your time. It's been really, really interesting, fascinating. I know we could probably talk for hours, but just in a general sense, what are the plans for McCarthy & Co. and for yourself personally, I suppose, in the short term and in the long term? Do we even look beyond the next 3 to 6 months?
I don't think we can. I mean, we have been, really just fundamentally repositioning our business as this thing hit. I mean, and one of the big lessons I learned from the last time was we just did not let things kind of, trundle along in the hope that everything would get better. We took kind of immediate action and made some radical changes, and hopefully we can, and again, because we repositioned the business, we're hopefully in a sector of the economy that is not as exposed to the wider economic activity. But we are dependent. Of course, the courts are closed at the moment, and so we're waiting to see when that might reopen. Or so at the moment we're at the moment, I have been focusing on my marketing, and I have been really, really, really thrilled at the amount of I've been able to get done because I've had so much time to be able to devote to it. And because that's, I mean, I'm going back to the fundamentals of our marketing, our website, our email list, our all of our marketing fundamentals, and putting the time into that now. And if there's anybody out there who's sitting there wondering, what should I be doing? I'm kind of sitting at home and I'm anxious and I'm worried and I'm also a little bit bored. Well, that is where you should be putting your energy in now. It's building your practice for the future, for whatever is going to be. I mean, because this is going to end, this will pass, and we need to be ready to get back to business when it does.
Can I just ask, one of the practical issues that practitioners and the public are facing now is regards signing documents, wet signatures? People are in isolation, people are cocooning, social distancing. So, someone wants to make a will, because in order for any will to be valid, it must be on paper. It must, the beneficiary must sign. Sorry, the testator, the person makes will, signs it in a normal signature, but that must be witnessed by 2 people who are not beneficiaries. How is there any way around that now? If someone really wants to make a will, does sister travel? What
I mean, there's no way around that legal requirement of the Succession Act, and it's. I mean, there's a specific carve out actually in the E-Commerce Act that you can't do any of this digitally or remotely. So wills have to still be witnessed by 2 people physically present, and this can be done. I mean, we are doing wills now regularly for people. We can arrange social distancing in the office if that's required, or in the case of people with cocoon, we can go out and see them, and we can actually. And in fairness, I think the Law Society has provided excellent guidance in this area, and we can witness a will. You can be physically present, but you can actually witness the will through a window where the cocooning person is in the house and you're outside, or the 2 witnesses are outside. They're all present together, and the document is then passed back out and signed. Similarly, we've situations where people the testator, the person making the will, might be sitting in their car and might sign the will on the dashboard of the car with the 2 witnesses looking in the windscreen and pass it out the window. So I mean, you're looking at situations like that, but that can be done and it should be done. I think that's an important point, Evan. Thank you for bringing it up. Actually, is that I mean, because I've even heard the Taoiseach talking in relation to this. Cancer hasn't gone away. People should still be going to their doctors. They should still be showing up for medical appointments, getting medical treatment if they're not feeling okay. They shouldn't be saying, "Oh, I'm not COVID," or "I don't want to be putting pressure on the health service." If they're not well, they should go to medical assistance. Similarly, people need to take care of things like wills, enduring powers of attorney. These are documents. It's a little bit more challenging now, and we do have to take precautions with social distancing and everything like that. And I mean, but people should still take care of those things because they can be done. I mean, where I do think we need reform of the laws in areas like affidavits, for instance, Deb, I certainly think we should no longer be having affidavits sworn on oaths before commissioner for. That's absolutely completely anachronistic in our society, and it's unsafe now so we should be able to do that stuff remotely where we need to.
So just for someone that may not be aware of that, for any legal document that's submitted into court, whether it's a summons or a motion, whatever it might be, that's supported by an affidavit, a declaration by usually the client to say that the contents are correct and accurate. But that's when, or they just might sign the end of the document themselves. But for that document to be valid for court, the person who makes the declaration must have a witness by another solicitor and not the solicitor that they've hired to carry out their action.
Yes, but more particularly, what I find objectionable about that is that they then have to be asked, do you have any religious faith? And if you do, regardless of whether you wish to or not, you have to then swear the oath for that affidavit on the sacred text of the faith that it may be. If you're a Christian person, you swear on the Bible. People of the Islamic faith would use the Quran, etc. And it's just, I mean, frankly, I find it offensive to be asking people now, do you believe in God or whatever? And then, because you can only affirm, which is the kind of civil version of it, if you don't actually have religious faith. So I think that's an urgent change to a law that we need. And it's something that I think now we particularly need it, because I think we need to change that system completely so that affidavits can be signed, and they should still have the same, seriousness, and it shouldn't be, legal perjury if you sign a document that you know to be false. But I think we need to modernize how we do all of that.
Yeah, Flor, once again, thank you so much for your time today. If there's any young up and coming solicitors out there, or someone maybe if the Leaving Cert whenever it goes ahead wants to do law, or someone coming out of UCC, what advice would you give to someone starting out on a legal career now?
Well, I think first of all, I think this is an amazing profession. I think it will always have a great future. I think that you should be coming to it from a place of service and how you can help and how you can serve. And if I was looking at it from a commercial point of view, from a business point of view, I would then need to see how can I then serve people who are going to be able to, for whom my service is going to be of sufficient value for them that it's going to be, it's going to make a practice area worthwhile for me. So I would look very specifically at what it is that you want to do and who it is that you want to help, and then focus on a niche, not to be all things to all men, that I will do everything from a needle to an anchor. That is, I remember I set up a business on my own. It was myself and my mom, but it was very, very, very small. I would do anything. I'd go up a tree to get business. You know what I mean? I would do anything. And I would do family law and district court, and I do conveyancing, and I do, and that was the way we did. I guess we all did that, but it's daft. And I think you should go into a niche, and in a way, people are reluctant to go into niches and to exclude other areas because they think that that's kind of maybe, it's excluding things that they might otherwise have opportunities in. It's actually much more powerful if you go narrow into a niche, and so you identify who is your ideal client, who is the person who you are best suited to help, and then how are you going to help them, and then you need to have technical expertise in that area. So there's no getting around that. That's a given as far as I'm concerned. But to do it based on a very clear understanding of who it is you're going to help and in what specific area you're going to do that, and then get about marketing your services effectively in that area.
Tell people your story.
Tell your story. Be authentic. You said it just here earlier on, and I think it's a great point, Dave, and thank you very much. We're all just people, and we all this professional thing with the tie and all that, but we're all just individuals just trying to get on with things and do our stuff and live our lives. And don't be afraid to be yourself and be authentic.
Yeah. Listen, Flor, thank you so much. That's great advice. Thank you again for your time. It's been really appreciated. We sincerely wish you all the best, and perhaps we might check in with you again in a couple of months once we've hopefully been out of the COVID-19.
I'd be honored, Dave. And thank you for having me on the podcast today. And thank you to your listeners here for joining us today. I really appreciate the time and attention. And I wish you all the best.
Thank you. Same to you.